in this 5+1 section, Eric. A phenomenal start for Hans. He's not really playing positions where he's had to take incredible risk, and he's converted both of them into wins. I have to say that last game, that game we just watched, Eric, was so effortless because the opening and the way Ding played it was just not very competitive, right? He had the white pieces, he just traded into a slightly worse position, and it just got worse and worse from there.
No, that's a nightmare. I mean, Ding is a very strong technical player. To just play that type of position, a fairly basic position, that poorly does not bode well. I think he's I mean, he is the underdog this match, and giving away games might not get a chance to come back, especially like with White. That should be the opportunity for him to pose some problems. But
Mhm.
Hans has to be just very happy with his start. Um, Gifted a
Yeah,
pawn,
we
converted
see this
well,
G5 again. What do you
and
make of this G5, Eric? I also remember interviewing Wesley, and I think he was saying that Vincent had some crazy G5 stuff that he was like, "Wow, I mean, this honestly, it was just good prep. Like it was really tough to deal with." So, is this a new age of the Italian game?
it is the new age of the Italian game. At the same time, White players are provoking this. They're if G5 is
Right.
being played, you can play G5 without White bringing out their dark squared bishop. That's riskier. But G5 is much more standard when White brings that dark squared bishop out early to pin. So yes, it is very scary, but at the same time, you're inviting it as White. If you play the standard
Right.
older main lines, that doesn't occur. I think in the first game, well, I mean, Hans did win with White, not because of the opening, but we got a nice fighting position.
Hmm.
Both players are happy with that. For Ding, I think when we compare the first game when he had black compared to the second game when he had white, he'll take this position. Rich, there's opportunities. But look at that. Maybe Hans has some of his own ideas. That's a sack for 2 pawns and the center early on, Amon, and played without thinking that, indicates to me this idea he's seen before,
Yeah.
probably looked at it at home, and the evaluation is that there's lots of counterplay here for white. There's lots of compensation. Maybe I'm going to play pawn to e5 and find a way to get my knight to e4. But
Yep.
black's king is stuck. The pawn, like, even without talking about tactical ideas, just by having this pawn center, that bishop on e7 is shut out right now. So when we have a rich board, lots of pieces, that middle cuts off a lot of the squares for black to find active squares, outposts, and in the long run, that could really pay off.
Yeah, we see basically the same idea, knight g6, looking for the h4 pawn, but it's much less impactful now. The move pawn to e5 and knight e4, threatening knight f6 check, is uh, actually just something I'm not sure that can be prevented. So I'm expecting that if e5 gets played, Ding might actually consider knight takes h4 anyway and bring the knight back to f5 and almost plan to sack some material there, but I don't know, Eric. This really does not look too promising for Ding because you barely have pieces developed, and the bishop on a7 is such an irrelevant piece with the c3 d4 pawns. It's not just the sack in the center; it's mainly that dark square bishop is completely out of the game.
Yeah, it's clear Hans doesn't want Ding to get comfortable, doesn't want to play positions where maybe they both know what's going on, but Ding can rely on his experience, his world championship prep, stable positions. Here, not at all.
Yep.
There's issues at every turn, and as long as the queens are on the board and you see all this activity from white, Ding's not going to feel comfortable whatsoever with that king on e8. Bishop d5, provoking c6. I mean, now maybe you pull the bishop back to e4. You're like, I don't mind trading if I get my knight to e4. But if you don't trade, now c6 is also a weakness. Now the knight is stuck on d8, can't move because c6 is loose. Now the rooks can't connect. Rook
Yep.
b1 maybe. F4.
Oh,
Holy cow.
yeah. I mean,
Now
that's a very, very direct move, right?
that's
It's
very direct to play f5.
oof.
Normally, you'd meet this with f5 yourself as black, but that doesn't work tactically. Hmm.
Yeah, H pawn is defended here. The rook on G8 just opened up. So actually, although F4, I mean, it's almost the face that Hans has right now on the camera that's describing my feeling about F4 perfectly. It's kind of like, I feel that this is like a good move. It's a fun move. It gets my pieces active. I feel like it might work out, but at the same time, I know that I'm giving counterplay to my opponent.
Yeah, definitely gives black the G file. I thought Queen D3 was about to be played. I liked
Hmm.
Queen D3, thought that served a similar purpose, but the queen is really centralized there. You'd love to get your queen maybe to C4 in some positions, or maybe even take on A6.
Right.
Not now, but in the future, if the rook ever moves from A8, which I wasn't. Yeah, knight G5 though. So F7 is guarded by the knight on D8, but
But the
at the
coordination
current
is just so
pace,
strong, right? Knight h7 to f6 is coming, and although you achieved c5, c4, I think
bishop
Hans is
H7,
yeah,
rook
he's in
takes
cruise control.
G5, I guess is forced because otherwise then you lose the knight on E5. So now we're looking at a rook for two pieces.
It's interesting because bishop h7 was played very quickly to hit the knight on e5, and it almost, I mean, I'll just say, I think that's a moment where Hans played way too quick. He was almost assuming the way that Ding was playing that he was just drawing dead, but that's not the case at all. Rook takes g5, and you're back in the game.
No, and you're in Ding's shoes. You're happy to give up the exchange. You're worried about getting like checkmated in the middle of the
Yep.
board. Your rooks aren't connected. The value compared to that knight, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
So this definitely gives Ding counterplay. It's a wild position, but all of a sudden, our ideas for white, we don't have as many. We don't have that knight putting pressure on those squares around Black's king. Bishop E3, that could definitely be played. Uh, you still lack stability as black here. Safety for the king. I don't know if you can get the queens off somehow. He's playing king there. I mean, I'm not sure if you can play G6. G6, maybe king G7, but I'm not. Wow. Rookie one played and Dings realized that there's an issue here.
But Hans also immediately saw bishop e3. So rook e1, sacking the rook, a brilliancy by Hans. But you know what? It was easy to find because
G6?
he knew that
Yeah.
bishop e3 was so bad. So he just said, well, let me stop that. And now you're moved g6. There's no way to interpose queen h6. The dark square bishop's coming alive. I mean, you're up material here, but it's hardly relevant. Hans is going to win this game.
No, yeah, exactly. It's not relevant if your pieces aren't there to defend. And look at where black's pieces are. Bishop E5 check. I'm looking
Yeah.
at if you can play bishop E5 and then sack on
Mm-hmm.
F6 and play queen H6. Don't know if
Yeah.
that works, but it's extremely enticing to sack the
Yep.
bishop, play queen H6, preparing G7. Ideas like that. Um, he's
That's a
certainly
great line, Eric.
calculating it.
I think it's working, and I think Hans is calculating exactly that right now. By the way, bishop e5, if you move the king to f8, well, g7, all of a sudden I have another queen on the board. I think bishop e5, pawn f6, sack on f6 with the bishop, queen h6, and then if black slides the queen over to g7, you have a number of ways to win there. Rook f1 check, not to mention
Rook
queen
F1,
f4, I
yep.
think is forced checkmate in a couple moves. So a really, really nice line. I think he's just double checking it. He rushed earlier and he kind of knew that he made a mistake. So he's taking his time here. But Eric, I think he's got bishop e5 in his sights.
Yeah, we can find other moves like queen G5. I'd love to play, but black can play F6. Wow. He doesn't play bishop takes F6. There's something you saw. I don't see it right now off the top of my head, but this is
Uh-huh.
still powerful. There's just when you give that check on H6, I'm wondering what the follow-up is. I think that was a missed opportunity. I think that
Yeah, it
was
looked really
definitely a
good, but clearly there was a resource. The engine wasn't saying like, "Hey, this is forced mate" or
exactly,
anything. So
exactly.
there was something there that credit to Hans because he probably spotted something, although he didn't make the best move in the end. We'll have to see. It's now a completely different game, though, Eric, and I think Ding is probably a really, really fortunate to be in the position that he's in right now with another
Knight
sacrifice.
takes
Ding is back in
D6.
the game.
So we get the queens off the board, and there's some positions that I'm worried about for white where your bishop is stuck on H7.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be a little bit careful about the bishop being stuck on h7. If enough pieces are traded off, you can't extract that bishop.
Yeah, rook
But watch out,
e7.
rook e7.
What do you do
Rook
about that?
e7, you can't go king h6. Bishop f4 is mate. Rook e7, is he planning? Just has to be planning king h8, right?
Well, the funny thing about that bishop on h7 is you can never push the pawn to g7.
Has to be
So
planning it, yeah.
I could see a draw with rook e7 and trade the bishops on c5 and then maybe rook e8, rook e7. But honestly, the bishop on h7 is so bad now. Eric, I
Might
can
play
see
king
positions
h6,
where Hans
yeah.
loses.
No,
Yeah,
that's the
exactly.
bishop on h7 was, it's been my concern the entire time. There's no good way to extract it. You play rook e7, it's a check, but now you're forcing the bishops off because your bishop will then be pinned. Hans is down to 30 seconds. He's playing rook e7, but king h6. Is Ding playing king h8 with draw potential or king h6? Saying,
It
hey,
is.
figure out how to get your bishop out. Because if you
Yeah, you
don't,
can. I mean, you can play bishop g8, but that pawn is going down. You can solidify this pawn on a6 with pawn to a5 or even rook a5.
okay, Ding has time to play bishop d3 check, followed
Hmm.
by, no, bishop d3, bishop f5. So black would still be up a pawn. Because if
You
rook
can,
takes a6, there's rook
yeah,
h4 check.
yeah. That's actually a really nice tactic. Rook takes a6, and probably that's
a5.
exactly what was missed.
So Ding is up a pawn, time getting closer. You'd love to push your pawn to a2 with a bishop on e6, defending the diagonal, but c4 is a great find by Hans. Maybe you can plant the bishop on d5 and just try to hold there. Ding's going to
And
march his king down the dark squares.
exactly. The pawn on a2, you get it there, but there's actually not a more uncomfortable position that exists. Your rook on a1 can't move, and well, obviously it can go to c1, but not keeping the a pawn as well. So I think Hans is going to be happy with his drawing chances now.
For sure. And I'm just not sure if Ding maximized that, right?
No, not at all. Definitely
I mean,
not.
maybe he sees this position reminds him of a certain world championship game where he was the one down a pawn in a drawn, what should have been a drawn position and lost. So he
Mhm.
can play this on for a little bit, but doesn't look like he's even trying. I mean, that's a good recovery by Ding, but you'd like to